Thank you. Well, members, visitors and guests, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to our 33rd meeting of this Rotary year. It's our 4,976th club meeting in our 102nd year, and it's only 9 weeks until the Rotary International Convention is here in Melbourne. Our guest speakers today are the Venerable Dr. Colleen O'Reilly, AM, Archdeacon of Stonington, and Alex Katz, Chair of the Council of Christians and Jews, Victoria. Together they will form our expert panel, convened by Peter Hollingworth, on the theme of religion and peace. And both will be more fully introduced by our moderator, Ron Cullen. But in the meantime, would you please join me in making them welcome? Now, returning to our club as my guest today, we have Shamila Murali from Calgary, Canada. Now, Shamila was an ambassadorial scholar at the University of Melbourne in 2011-12, when I was her district mentor. So I've asked Shamila to update us on her journey since being in Melbourne as an ambassadorial scholar and what's happened in the last 12 years. Also visiting today and hosted by our club ambassadors for Rotary Safe Families, Peter Berg and Ahmed Tahau, we're delighted to have past member Dorothy Gilmore, who's also President nominee of Rotary Club of Hawthorn. So please stand, Dorothy. And hold the applause. And Shakila Wasonga. We'll be hearing from Ahmed and Shakila shortly, but in the meantime, please make all these special guests all welcome. We have other visitors with us today as well, so for those visitors, could you please stand when I announce your name and remain standing for our club to welcome you in our traditional manner. We have visiting Rotarian, in addition to Dorothy from Rotary Club of Hawthorn, we have Casey Tan from Rotary Club of Carlton. And we also have the guest of Bernie McIntosh today, we have Kat Sayers. Please join me in making them all welcome. Now, peace is at the heart of Rotary, of course, being the fourth object of Rotary. The object, of course, is the advancement of international understanding, goodwill and peace through a world fellowship of business and professional persons united in the ideal of service. The history of the adoption of peace as an object of Rotary was slightly after community service, a new concept in 1921 when the word charity or charitable was preferred. Our club, of course, has peace as a significant part of our fabric. We are a peace builder club. Past President Angus Mitchell, of course, led the return of Rotary to Germany and Japan after World War II. We have unparalleled success in selecting and nominating peace scholars. We have hosted multiple peace forums. And we have our newly renamed Rotary Melbourne Peace Park and Peace Bells. Today we celebrate and focus on peace and international understanding with the return of an ambassadorial scholar, community peace with our Rotary Safe Families project, and a panel discussing religion and peace. So it's a great coincidence that 2011-12 Rotary Foundation ambassadorial scholar Shamila Murali has landed in Melbourne in Rotary Water and Sanitation Month. Shamila completed a University of Melbourne Masters in Environmental Engineering, focusing on water and wastewater treatment. So let's hear from her on her journey since her last visit to our club in the Windsor Hotel in November 2011. Shamila.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. I'm very, very excited that Adrian invited me to come speak with you today and be a part of today's meeting. This has definitely inspired me to get more involved in Rotary again when I go back home. So I'll probably start looking at which club will be the most suited for me. So as an update for what I've been doing since 2011 when I left Melbourne. Actually, I left Melbourne in 2012 because I was in school for 2011 here at the University of Melbourne. I'm continued to be an engineer working in the area of water and wastewater treatment. and I work now for Jacobs, that's a global multinational firm, competitors to GHD. Very much loving my job. I work a lot, but it's good. We work very much on time zones at Jacobs. And now, since I left Melbourne, I now have, I got married. I have 2 children, 2 and 4, who are here in Melbourne with me. And that was what brought us back. We just came on a vacation. So I happened to post that I was here in Melbourne, and Adrian caught hold of that and invited me here. So I'm very grateful for social media. Not that I'm not very active on social media, but in this case, I'm very grateful for social media, and I'm very grateful that I had him. He was a great mentor to me while I was here, and thank you for inviting me here. I hope that you guys have a great lunch, and yeah, I'm super excited to be here. So thank you.
Well done, Shamili. All the right things you said, well, the cheque will be in the mail as well. Now, the Rotary Safe Families project has its roots in Rotary Melbourne, emerging from our Community Welfare Committee and led by Dorothy Gilmore and past President Mary Barry. It is a community peace and awareness project. I'd now like to call on our member Ahmed Tahau, who's an ambassador for peace and a member of the advisory committee at the Universal Peace Federation Victoria branch. Ahmed's important role in promoting peace initiatives fit nicely into the main topic of the day. Presenting with Ahmed will be community worker Shakila Wasonga from the Brotherhood of St Lawrence. They'll update us on the Safe Families African Australian Inclusive Communities Initiative.
Hello everyone, thank you very much. My name is Ahmed. This is not the first time that I came to stand in front of you. The first time I came was when I became a member of Rotary Melbourne a few years ago, just before the COVID. So I got this project, important project with Peter Berg. Peter invited me this important project to help and assist the African communities. The topic of family violence is a complex and widespread issue in the world. African communities are no exception. However, the root cause of the family violence within African community are unique and creating a lot of concern amongst African community in diaspora. One of the primary factors of contributing this family violence amongst the African community is a cultural belief that, which is male dominant. You know, men thinks that they own the wife, the kids, and everything, you know, rather than mutual sharing. This deeply ingrained cultural norms often translates men accepting power and control over women and children in the household. So any deviation from the prescribed role is considered a form of disobedience amongst the African families. Furthermore, cultural norms often dictates that domestic issues should be kept within family to maintain status and avoid shame, because they don't want to disclose whatever is happening, the violence and issues that's happening amongst African communities. This practice can prevent victims from reporting abuse, making it difficult to authorities to intervene and provide support to those in need, particularly women and children from African communities. Another factor contributing to the family violence in African communities is economic hardship. Many families in African communities struggles to make ends meet with high level of unemployment and poverty. The stress and the pressure of financial difficulties also leads an increased tension and conflict within the families, which can escalate and escalates many times into a violence. Financial stress also contributes drug and alcohol abuse, which further exacerbate family violence. Social isolation is another factor contributing to family violence amongst African communities. Many African immigrants feel discontent from their new culture, new communities, and struggle to understand the cultural norms in the Western world and the expectations. This isolation causes stress, depression, and other mental health issues, which further contributes family violence and victimizations, and feel also ashamed to reach out the victims and seek and get resources. To prevent and address family violence amongst African community, it's essential to address the root causes of this problem. One of the approaches is to promote and empower women and also challenge the cultural attitude towards the gender roles amongst the African communities. Also, community education, which is one of the toolkit that this project put together, which translated valuable information into Swahili and also Arabic language, because there's a lot of, when it comes to Arabic language, people think like it's only Eastern, because there's major parts of African, particularly in the North, speaks Arabic, so they're also African. So we translated those useful information into Arabic language. Thanks to Dorothy and Bita and Shakila for this project. So I think it's very important, this project for the African communities to get empowered and also to get the right resources and information as they should do. And thank you very much for those people who put it together. Thank you, Rotary Melbourne.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shakila Wesonga. I am a local area coordinator working for the Brotherhood of St. Lawrence, supporting people with a disability. And I'm so happy to be here working on this project with Dorothy, Ahmed, and Peter. So I come from Kenya. I've been in Australia for 13 years now. And I am in this project representing the Swahili-speaking nations in Australia, and that would include Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, Congo, and so many other countries. And so I do help in not really translating, but maybe I should say translating, not the documents, but telling the team what, like, you know, what the everything means in Swahili. And this, to me, the project is very important to me, one, as a woman, and as a woman of color, as an African woman. And I think being an African woman, we are seen as a lesser gender, you know, like women and children are grouped together. And so women tend to face lots of violence from men. And most women don't report this, be it in Africa or even here, you know, and that could be because they fear, you know, Ahmed talked about shame. There is another risk of fear of, you know, like the consequences. If I report, am I going to lose my kids? What's the society going to think about me and my family? And so the aim of the project is really to reach out to these women and just letting them know that there is help available, you know, it is safe, you're here, you're safe, you can talk to someone, you can talk to the police, there is help all around you. All you need to do is, you know, ask, and that's why we have these documents translated in other languages like Swahili and Arabic, so that people who have got limited English can be able to read this and really understand that there is help out there for them. And I think also some barriers that women face, and especially women who came to Australia as refugees, you know, most of them have got the language barrier, so they really don't know how to communicate in English, or they've got very limited English. And again, that's why we have this document translated in Swahili. And also, while we do this project, we are trying to be really culturally sensitive about the African community. So we're doing this also working with the community leaders, because we know they do have a role to play as well in the community. And so we are working with them as well, just to be able to get this information out to all the communities that need it. So thank you so much for having us here. And we're really hoping that this project kicks off and it helps even one person. So yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you, Shakila, and sorry for the interruption before. It's great to have Chris Rodd back from his skiing trip, and with it he brings a Rotary banner from the Rotary Club of Revelstoke in British Columbia. So just a reminder for anyone else who's venturing off anywhere, it's always great to visit a Rotary meeting anywhere in the world. So thanks for Chris for bringing that back. As I started to say before, Mary Barry last week spoke about the Big Sell, which is on Wednesday of next week. The Big Sell, of course, being where the Big Issue gets some additional vendors helping around the streets of Melbourne to help sell their magazine. Next week, I will be out there selling along with our District Governor and Club member Amanda Wendt. So as Mary said, make sure you get out and buy your copy of the Big Issue next week. I don't know where we'll be as yet, but keep an eye on our club socials, and there's sure to be something on there to let you know where we are. And with that, it's now time for the raffle. Thank you. And the winning ticket for today is a black ticket D09. Is that Stephen Mandy? Have you? Oh, sorry, Stephen. Well, Shakila. Fantastic. So congratulations to our guest Shakila on winning the raffle as well. It's a good day out. And with that, it's now my pleasure to hand this meeting over to our Chair of the Day, Ron Cullen, to further introduce our guest speakers and convene our discussion panel.
Well, thank you, President Aiden, Rotarians and guests. We have a panel. We've got two speakers to address the issue of religion and peace. In 1938, a well-known leader of an ex-colonial government waved a piece of paper and said he'd negotiated peace in his time. And I was around when World War II broke out, but he was clearly deluded, or history doesn't actually support his position. The depressing thing, I think, is that if you have a look today, I'm not sure we've made an awful lot of progress. I think things have changed. The pressures to go to war have changed, but when you have a look around the world, it's not a totally encouraging idea. So it's a good thing, I think, that we've got some speakers to address this. It's an important issue. And even if we don't totally solve it today, I think it's an important thing that we're going to address. I think basically there's lots of people, including Rotary, that will give us guidelines about how to get along with our friends. The problem is, how do we get along with our enemies? And it's a different situation, really, and we're still struggling with how to do that. Our first speaker today is Dr. Colleen O'Reilly, Archdeacon of Stonington. She's a leading light in the Anglican Church. She's been involved in the various cultural shifts that have gone on there in recent years. Her contributions to education and the Church have been recognised recently with an Order of Australia, and I'd like you to please welcome her, and I'll ask her to address us first. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your very warm welcome, and thank you for a delicious lunch. If we asked people walking past on the street this afternoon, does religion contribute to world peace or to strife? I think we know what the answer would be. They'd say it causes strife. And it's not difficult, is it, to cite examples of contemporary or historical examples of one religion attacking another. It's been happening ever since Cain the farmer slew his brother Abel the shepherd over a difference in what to offer to God in worship. And those two brothers remind us that enmity and violence, as well as charity and compassion, begin very close to home. In the Old Testament scriptures, which form a large part of the Christian Bible, peace, or shalom in Hebrew, is the absence of war or strife, whether that's between individuals, communities, or nations. Peace is built on justice. That is, on right relationships between peoples. The prophet Isaiah declares on God's behalf, "The effect of righteousness will be peace, and the result of righteousness, quietness and trust forever." And shalom, this concept of peace, is linked to things being done well. What needs to be done in a community being done well and properly is another basis of peace. It's also linked to the restoration of stolen goods or the retraction of lies. And anyone who offends in that way in the ancient world offered a sacrifice of a ram without blemish, meaning one of the best of their flock, before being restored to good standing in the community. Shalom also meant peace for the peace of individual contentment, and peacefulness at death is desired, which was promised to Abraham. One of the loveliest visions of a peaceful life is expressed by the early prophet Micah. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. But they shall sit under their own vines and under their own fig trees, and no one shall make them afraid. The vision of a world at peace pervades the prophets who denounce injustices, especially when the rich oppress the poor, or rulers seek aggrandizement by compromising treaties. There is a strand in the scriptures where peace is the result of enemies being annihilated, as sometimes expressed by the psalmist, but the much preferred stance towards threatening strangers, towards the outsider, is to convert them, befriend them, convert them, care for them. That's the basis of peace. In the Christian scriptures, peace is much more of an inner disposition, based first on being at peace with God and then with others. The word irene, the Greek word, is spoken by individuals to Jesus and to whole communities by the Apostle Paul, whose letters to churches usually begin with a greeting of peace. He did need to encourage them to be peaceful because most of Paul's letters were written to people who were fighting one another. But Jesus often spoke peace to people. The anonymous woman who anointed him in the house of Simon the Pharisee, he sent her away with the words, "Go in peace." Jesus also spoke of loving enemies and putting away swords. And the only warfare that Jesus envisages is the metaphorical warfare, the struggle between good and evil. The most striking example of Jesus speaking words of peace is when the risen Christ appears to those who had known him in this life and speaks the word of peace. They can see his hands, wounded hands, but the first word he speaks to them is always peace, a word of forgiveness. The early church forbade military service, and there remains a long-standing tradition of Christian pacifism, Christians who refuse to engage in the military or to fight in any way, even though it might cost them their life. Another strand within the Christian faith accepts a proportionate defence of oneself. So you can't pull out a machine gun and attack a person who's attacking you with a knife. So it needs to be proportionate. Well, to conclude, world peace is fostered by just relationships between peoples and nations, and by the reduction of ignorance about the major world religions, an ignorance that, alas, is widespread in the Western culture. It's also fostered when we do not automatically fear what we do not know or understand, and when we embrace the challenge to make the world one where people have sufficient food, clean drinking water, shelter, medical care and education, and they are all necessities that I know Rotary International knows a great deal about, because that's the kind of thing that you engage in with your projects. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Our next speaker is Alex Katz. He chairs the Council of Christians and Jews, and I've no doubt addressed the problem of what happens when you can't convert everybody. He's also got an interesting background. I think one of the primary problems we face in the world today is that everything I look at is ungovernable, and here's a man who's worked for government, and he's worked in the public sector for a while as well. So, and he survived all of that. So I can only suggest that he's an ideal person to conclude our remarks today. Alex, thank you.
Thank you, Rotary. Thank you, everyone. Colleen and I are both part of the Council of Christians and Jews. We're both on the executive, but we didn't coordinate what we were going to say, and remarkably, we're going to say some similar things. So I guess that's good in a sense. So let me begin. Thank you for this opportunity. I want to begin by saying that unlike our other esteemed panelists, I do not usually speak on such platforms. I am neither a religious scholar nor part of a clergy, and I am not connected to a particular religious institution. But I am a very active member of the Jewish community and someone who is across the entire spectrum of Judaism. I'm also, as was said, the chair of the Council of Christians and Jews and a member of the executive of the Jewish, Muslim and Christian Association, as well as an advisor to a number of multicultural bodies. World peace, in a true sense, is the purpose of all the organizations that I'm part of. But before we get to that, I want to talk about the concept of peace in general, both from some broad and some specific elements within Judaism. As someone who is not a scholar, I usually come to these things from what I already know. For instance, I learned when I was a child that the word that may be familiar to you, which Colleen mentioned, is shalom. For those who have visited Israel, you will know that shalom is commonly used for both hello and goodbye. But many years ago, I also learned that shalom also means peace. So I have always wondered why a word that is used to casually welcome and farewell someone has the same meaning as peace. In English, according to the Oxford Dictionary, the word peace means a situation or a period of time in which there is no war or violence in a country or an area. But it also means the state of being calm or quiet. In Hebrew, every word comes from a three-letter root, which usually has its own meaning, and linguists spend a lot of time connecting all Hebrew words to their original roots. Rabbinic scholars then in turn find spiritual meaning within those connections. The word shalom is therefore made up from three letters, shalem, that mean full or whole. So the question is, what is the spiritual connection between a greeting and a sense of wholeness? Even in English, the word whole, with a W, could mean that everything is complete and nothing is damaged, or in other words, that everything is in its rightful place. From the traditional Jewish understanding, that is exactly what shalom, or peace, is really about. That the world is calm, complete, undamaged, and with everything where it should be. So when an Israeli says shalom to greet or farewell you, although they might not consciously be thinking it, what they are really saying is that they hope that everything in your world is as it should be, which is the ultimate greeting, don't you think? In Jewish learning, in general, there is often a simple meaning, and then there is a deeper meaning. In this case, the deeper meaning is that shalom, in both the sense of wholeness and peace, is such an important word that is a synonym for one of the many names of God. So much so, and this may surprise you, that there are certain words that one is not permitted to say in the bathroom because that is not a place where one is clean. And you guessed it, shalom is one of those words. The question then is what makes the word or the concept so holy, and why is shalom a synonym for the Almighty? Often for ancient Hebrew words, one way to see what importance is placed on a word is to see how many times it appears in the Bible. The word shalom appears in all 24 books of the Old Testament and 240 times in the 5 books of Moses. The Hebrew word for justice, by contrast, appears 120 times. This shows that, at least superficially, pursuing peace is doubly as important as pursuing justice. And in another text, it says that the Torah, the Bible, was given so that humankind could establish peace. One way of doing this, as it says in Leviticus chapter 19, is to love your neighbor as yourself, or as some of the ancient commentaries paraphrase, don't do unto others what is hateful to you. The deeper meaning of that is that each of us should do what we can to ensure there is a continual state of harmony and calm in the world. In other words, world peace, which is an appropriate thing to be discussing the day after International Harmony Day. One way of pursuing harmony, from a Jewish understanding, is to be active in your love for your neighbor. Simply not being hateful is not enough, but love alone, as an emotion, is equally not enough. There are rules and prescriptions through all of Jewish liturgy, largely because human nature left unchecked often leads to actions and situations where power corrupts and where selfishness and hatefulness sadly shine through. Love, in the Jewish sense, says that someone else might be different from me, but that is okay. Since they too were created in the image of God, it is up to me to respect them and to treat them with dignity. In fact, I am mandated to do that, and there will be consequences if I let hateful acts happen to my fellow humans and I stand idly by and do nothing. My role as a human, therefore, is to do all that I can so that hateful acts are not committed. In our modern parlance, we call this social justice or human rights, but the origins of that are ancient and biblical. There is, in fact, a very Jewish concept for that as well, which is called tikkun olam, translated literally as repairing the world, and it has been around in Jewish liturgy for 2 millennia. Initially, it was in the text as a provision for those who might be at a potential disadvantage, such as someone on the verge of divorce or someone about to be freed from slavery. In the 16th century, the concept was redefined as something holy, whilst in our times it has come to mean a focus on acts of social responsibility, so in other words, on fixing the world as we know it, and thus making it more complete. In a sense, it has become a bit of a catch-all phrase that means anything from social action to charitable giving to acts of kindness, though in reality, it is still about bringing peace to the world with a focus on improving society. And in fact, much of Judaism is about that. The rules and decrees are all there to ensure that Jews live a wholesome life so that they can bring good into the world. To me, that is what life is about and what it truly means to be Jewish and human. That is why I'm involved in organizations that are about bringing people together. For instance, the international arm of the Council of Christians and Jews was founded in 1946 in the aftermath of the Holocaust as a way to encourage interfaith dialogue and understanding. After all, it was Jews and Christians who were enemies for a long time, but the war showed them that there is a better way, and the initial meeting of the Council was one of the first public attempts by Christians to come to terms with the Holocaust. As a Jew of European extraction, this speaks to me. The motto of our council here in Victoria, as you see, is walking to get together towards understanding and mutual respect. I love this idea because it is the embodiment of the call for peace. If you understand and respect each other, then you will ultimately come one step closer to bringing about world peace. And for all the organizations that I'm involved in, it is about bringing about an equitable society and ensuring that people see eye to eye with each other, so as to eliminate the prospect of conflict and to bring about peace. So in answer to our original question about why is shalom a synonym for God, it is now pretty clear. It is our moral obligation to be God-like and our civic duty to respect each other, even if only because we're all created by the same maker. If we do that, then we can bring about a wholeness that the world needs. In fact, it is such an important concept that the holy city of Jerusalem is actually an amalgam of 2 Hebrew words, Ir Shalom, which means city of peace, or depending on how you read it, complete city. That sometimes seems ironic, but at the same time, this message of respect and see each other for who we are is, I believe, maybe needed more in Jerusalem than elsewhere. To finish up, I believe it was Benjamin Franklin who said that there is a time for everything, everything in its place. To me, this sounds ecclesiastical because if everybody really is in its place, then the world will be whole and at peace. Today I was invited to speak about the role of religion in fostering world peace. I hope that my words have demonstrated that surely any moral, upright person or any person with an understanding of history or conflict should do all that they can to ensure that the world becomes more shalom, more complete, and ultimately more peaceful. Thank you very much.
Seems to me we've had while he's running around, I'll ask the first question since I am the convener.
We've got 2 minutes.
It seems to me we've had a really good exposition of how religion is trying to contribute to world peace, and it's a good answer to a lot of the people who try and blame it for the lack of world peace. It doesn't make it any easier as a task, but I guess my point at the beginning was we've got to learn how to deal with people that we would rather not have a relationship with if we're going to have a peaceful world, and what lessons can be drawn from that? Because there's a long history of us trying to convert everybody, but how do we come to grips with people that we really don't agree with? And the speakers might have some comments about that.
Use this one.
I think step 1 is to acknowledge that it's not always easy, because once we acknowledge that, then we're not unconsciously motivated by that, and then to seek what we have in common, to find common values and common purposes. Dialogue, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. Do you want to?
Yeah, well, that's basically what I was going to say. I think that, as I said in my speech, I think seeing each other for who we are and speaking to people individually. I think if you see some, we see often people on internet forums use anonymous names and are not very happy to make themselves public. These are the kinds of things they would never say in public or to another person face to face. And I think when you do have an opportunity to speak to someone face to face, you're much more likely to not necessarily convince them, but at least make them understand that we're all at least deserving of each other's love and of God's love. So I think ultimately that should be the goal.
Thank you. Over to other questions.
I'll start the ball rolling if I can. Do you think religion and religious leaders have got a role to play in trying to placate the situation with Russia and the Ukraine?
I think that conflict demonstrates the trap of nationalism and national churches and equating any one set of values and religious beliefs with the nation in that sense. My understanding is that the Russian Orthodox Church backs the war with Ukraine in the way that we might have seen in the West happening in the Middle Ages, where there was just no questioning of the national interest by the church. Whereas in fact, I believe that the role of the church is to critique, offer support and critique as necessary. And I'm sorry, I'm sure there are people in the Russian Orthodox Church who are speaking out or trying to speak out, but my understanding is that they've fallen into that trap of equating national good with their own particular perspectives.
So the first thing I'll say is I don't think that whether you're a religious leader or any other kind, I don't think that you can negotiate with a despot, as has become pretty clear when it comes to Putin. And the second thing is whether they have a place to bring about peace or not, I don't know. But I do know that certainly here and probably in much of the rest of the world, religious leaders, certainly the multicultural advisory committees that I'm involved in, have been very much involved in the protests or in some of the other movements that are going on around the world against the current occupation. And I think that in that sense, religious communities, all multicultural communities, and all of us really have a role to play.
Thank you. My name is Ahmed. I am very happy to see you guys and listening the word of peace and harmony. The 21st century, there are more people, a lot of people moving away from religion and becoming atheist. I know there's a lot of choices people have to make, but they are also more concerning, those people who are moving, away from faith-based and, the harmony. And I know that I'm from Muslim background, and I know how hard it is to make a decision to move away from what I believe to become non-godly human being. So how can we just get people, there's a reasons that people are getting concerns about, and they're raising questions about, and asking themselves, what is this faith-based people, and what is the role to play to get those people back to God believing people? Sorry.
I'm not sure that it's necessarily our role to bring people in. I know from a Jewish perspective, certainly when it comes to life cycle events such as birth, death, marriage, those kind of things, that's when people come to their synagogue for the things that they're looking for. And often it's at those times when people feel the most religious. So I'm not sure that it's necessarily our goal to bring people. What I think from my perspective, and certainly from the work that I do, is to show them the things that religion can offer, and to do it in the best possible way. Like I said, active love is the way I would call it. Not as I said in the speech, love isn't just an emotion, that's not enough, but you need to actively show your love to other people. And to me, that's what if I see what the ultimate model of religion can be, to me, that's what it's about. It's about showing active love to all people. And to me, it doesn't matter what kind of, what religion you come from, but that should be the goal, I think, of all religion. But that's just my opinion as a non-scholar.
And although people may not be religious, there are many, many people who are of good heart and good purpose and who desire to see the things that religious people desire to see. So I think it's important to work with anyone who is desirous of peace.
This is more of I suppose, a general question, just about gender equality in religion. In terms of, Rotary used to be a male-dominated club with only male members many years ago, and luckily and gratefully, it's now got female members, and female members can take up any roles. So I'm just wondering, with some religions still resisting this idea of women taking senior leadership or religious roles, is that ever going to change?
Colleen was a pioneer in this field, so you can start.
Oh, it's very early days, I think, but yes, inevitably things will change. I think at the moment the church's report from God would be, could try harder, but things are changing. But that kind of cultural change is unfortunately very slow. And I said 30 years ago, I said we women need to have revolutionary patience. And I think that does ultimately make a difference. Yep.
I think we have to look at it from two perspectives. From our perspective as outsiders or people of liberal values, we certainly want to see change within religion. And I think from a Jewish perspective, you probably know about the differences between Orthodoxy and Reform. And in the Reform, more liberal streams of Judaism, there's definitely changes happening of women leadership positions. But if you ask an Orthodox woman, an Orthodox Jewish woman, she'll tell you that the position of the woman is different to the position of the man within religion, and should be very happy with that. So it depends on what your perspective is. Some people don't want to see change within the religion because they're very happy with the way things have always been, and they feel very comfortable with their place within that. So I think that you need to come with that understanding as well. I'm not advocating that we shouldn't work towards change. I very much believe we should, but I also think you need to speak to the people involved as well and not push things on them.
Actually, within Christianity, even within my own church, the Anglican Church, that is one of the ongoing struggles between the conservatives who do not want change and those people who are now living the change, and that's still a source of conflict.
Well, I think if we can't grapple with the sort of problems we've just been discussing, we better balk at grappling with some of the bigger differences around the world that we have got to cope with if we're going to actually foster peace. Let me conclude the session. We were never going to solve all of the problems of religion and peace today, but I think we've at least opened some of them up, and I thank our speakers very much for helping us explore what's a really very difficult question. We've got some presentations for you. Joe's got them. We've got a 100-year of Rotary coin and a book and a limited edition of socks, convention socks made from Australian sheep by our own Phil Endersby. So can I ask you all to thank our speakers for their contribution today?